Hey everyone, welcome back to She Bird Podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Wright, and today's guest is Beth. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Brooke. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love doing podcasts.
So, can you tell us what inspired the Perfection Saga and how long did it live in your head before hitting the page?
Okay, well, it was over 20 years ago. I had this story in my head, and I do have, and I know another one of your questions, I have three other stories that pop in my head, but this one started coming at me, and it came in these little black and white vignettes. The characters didn't have any names or other types of things. And this is the God's honest truth. I was cleaning my house, and the story started flowing through me in color. Like the characters became colorful. The story started to unfold. And I went into the shower and I turned it on. And all of a sudden, the characters' names, where they were going to be from, it just flowed through me. I got out of the shower, got to my laptop, and I said, this is the time. This is it. I'm supposed to write this. So that is the real truth about how the Perfection Saga started. It was in my head. But, there was a lot of different things. And then all of a sudden I connected them. And the best part was just sitting and writing it and writing it and writing it. And I'm still writing it. And excuse me. I thought, and then the next thing, after I was writing everything, I knew that I could get a literary agent and try to sell it to the publishing houses, but they don't look at you as a first-time author. So I knew I was going to go the self-publishing route. And I was well into the book when I started doing this. There is a site called the Alliance of Self-Publishers. And I did deal with two really bad self-publishers. And basically, they just wanted to sell you. And I went back and I looked at, they rated people by a green light, yellow light, and red light. And of course, the two people I spoke to were red lighted. And I interviewed every one of the 7 people that were good. And I finally landed on my publishing consultant, who said, incorporate yourself, do this, do that. And she put together a team that I interviewed, like editors. I interviewed the marketing people. I interviewed the woman who does my website and does my book covers. She's fantastic. So I really put together an A team. And so then that started the journey. And I gave them my manuscript, which was named something totally different. And she said, it sounds like a self-help book. So we had a meeting and we came up with the names. But I thought that book 1 was book 1. And they all kind of said to me, no, you have 2 books here. There's book 1 and book 2. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was literally writing 1 and 2. And my editor said, I thought it was the end of the story. And she said, no, continue. And everybody told me, continue the story, continue the story. So that's how my 3rd book, which is going to be coming out in weeks, it's with the editor now. The 3rd and 4th book are actually written, and I had to cut it because they said, Beth, again, you wrote 2 books. So I had to find a place, because I want to leave you with a cliffhanger at the end of every book. So I had to find a place between 3 and 4 that made sense. So book 3 at the editor, and my cover design's coming. Book 4 is already written, and book 5 and book 6 are already written. So they just kept telling me, continue this story because there's more to it. And I said, okay. And 7 and I believe 8, I believe to finish it the way I want to would go into an 8th book. They're gonna be full of chaos, the last 2 books. And yeah, so it was kind of like a mindset of my marketing person said, "What about if you did this?" And I said, oh, yes, that would put the band in chaos. So I'm taking that and I'm writing it. And once I get the you should write more, then it's very easy for me to continue the story. I don't have an issue with that. So writing the Perfection Saga has been very easy. And I do take some of it from my time in the New York club scene because I was part of that. I was not a singer, although I should have been, and did not have. When you're younger, you always subject yourself to self-doubt and, am I pretty enough? Can I do this? And if the self-doubt creeps in, you don't do it. And I didn't do it. And you know,
So why rock music? What drew you to write about the rock and roll lifestyle?
because there is a certain lifestyle and people glamorize it, and it is glamorous, except there is the other side of it. And if you're around it, and I lived it, there's sketchy stuff on the side. So I wanted to kind of write about what it takes, and that's the beginning of the story, how it takes a really hard time for somebody to see you, and you play in these clubs and you're doing covers, and maybe you have some of your original music, but I'm taking it from what I lived for several years, and I just thought it would make a great story about writing about what it takes to get there, and then once you're there, everything that comes with that. And sometimes it's not so glamorous, even when you're, the number one band in the country. You do have setbacks. And so that's what I write about.
Oh, okay. So did you base any of your characters on real people in your life or musicians you admire?
Um, well, I will say that the female lead is very much me. There are things about this story that actually happened to me. And of course, I fictionalized it in this character. But she's a lot like me. I'm a lot like her. And in the beginning of playing hard, there are different bands who are people who I had known, but I fictionalized them. There were 2 people who told me, you can use my real name. And I did. And one of them is the person who got me involved in this, because I started dating him. And he was a roadie for like the number one band on the circuit. So I got to meet like the best musicians that play the circuit. And then you meet other bands. And I started dating somebody in another band. And it was a serious relationship. So then you get to know all the bands on the circuit. And it's a terrible thing, but they kind of know you as somebody else's girlfriend as opposed to your real name. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's okay. It was okay. Um, are there other characters in the book? I mean, loosely, but I would never admit to the other characters being um, a certain musician because I don't want to get in trouble. Um, but I can say that the female lead is very much me, things that I would say. And sometimes when I'm writing the dialogue, I virtually have to say it out loud because if it doesn't sound like something I would say or something I believe my character would say, then I have to change it because she speaks in a certain way. She's from New York. She's an Italian girl, which I am both of those. She comes from a very wealthy family. I will not. I will say that I came from uh, not as privileged as she was, but my father did well, and she comes from a, let's just say, well-connected family, and my father was one of those people. So unless you grow up in that background, you don't understand the nuance, and so it's written the way an Italian girl whose father is connected would speak. And so I wrote that. I wrote what I knew. So yeah, um, it's gotten to the point where I live the character, and it's kind of scary at times because um, I know how she's going to react, and it would be the way I would react to a situation.
Yeah. So Gina is such a powerful character. How did you craft her voice?
Um, well, I crafted her voice as to something that I would say. Again, it's a very symbiotic relationship that I have with that character. Um, I feel everything she feels, and if you read the books, which I think you did, she has some, you know, hard times that she has to live through, and when you read the books, and especially when it's going through the editing process, you read it about 50 times. And every time that I get to certain points, I start crying my eyes out. And sometimes I say, you wrote this. Why are you crying? But it elicits that emotion from me because I am actually living that character.
Yeah.
And she lives by things that I would say.
Oh, okay, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about Trevor. He's complicated. What made you want to give him such a flawed yet compelling story?
Well, yes. I created him as, first of all, somebody who I would have been attracted to back then. So, um, the reason I made him so flawed is, first of all, they fall madly in love like the first day, right? Their first meeting is like boom. And as Rio, her cousin, says, it's like somebody sprinkled fairy dust on them, and that was it. That did not happen actually in my life, just to make clear. Um, it was because she came from such a privileged, wealthy lifestyle. I needed to make him a little bit more complicated because she took him, and he was very upfront with her about his life. And so it started to become, how much flawed can I make him? And she she becomes very much his protector in life. So I needed to make him flawed because he needs her. He actually needs her, and she needs him in a different way. But um, if I made him wonderful, then there wouldn't be any of that backstory of why he fell so madly in love with her from the beginning. And he has reasons why he finds her that way. So if I made everything perfect with him, it wouldn't be. a good story. And as the story unfolds, you find out more of his flaws.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, what would you say is the core message or theme of Playing Hard?
Um, well, it's in the beginning of their, they played in two separate bands in the beginning, and they kind of lived their lives where they were both performing at different clubs, and then they would come back to the carriage house, which is on her parents' property, and then they form a band together. And it's the message is the hard playing the club scene is, you play certain nights, and on the weekends you play different clubs, and it is a grind. It sounds like, oh, it's so glamorous, but you're showing up at a club at like 5 6 in the afternoon, and you don't leave there till 3 in the morning, and you're dealing with drunks, you're dealing with all the nastiness that comes with clubs, bar clubs, and the groupies, which I add in right from the beginning, because believe it or not, you could be a club band and have groupies, which Gina will tell you she hates them. So, and then they know that in order to get a record deal, and you're playing these clubs with the hope that somebody from a record company is going to notice you and then do a demo. And so I go through that process where they're playing clubs for 2 years, and they get a little bit of, when is it going to happen, and then it does happen, where two record companies, because back in the day it was the record companies wanting you, and you had to do a demo, and just because you did a demo didn't mean that the record company would sign you. And so they do get signed, and then you go through the process. Back in the day, we made albums, and it was, 7 to 10 songs on an album, and it was released to radio stations. And certain record companies had a lot more clout, and so if they wanted to highlight a band, they did. And then once you did an album, um, and in the story, I had them tour with the number one, they at the time, the number one band for that record label. So they were an opening act, and opening acts usually don't get any recognition. Like, people are talking, and but their music became so people loved it so much that they actually paid attention, and that catapulted them. And the touring aspect, people think you get on a plane, you go here, you go there. That has its downside, because you're not at home, you're away for 3 months. um, the groupie scene, the drug scene, everything is there for bands to have. And it's, do you indulge in it, or where is that line? And the cliffhanger for Playing Hard is obviously, don't want to give too much away, but the couple deciding that they were going to take their relationship the next step, because the person in the other band, that's a big band, just think of any big band that they were touring with, said, um, he said, if I were you, I would marry that person, because somebody like me can take her away. And that scared him. So, and it goes back to that he needs her, because she's everything that he needs for a protector. And she needs him because she, like me, felt she was never good enough. She was never pretty enough. But what she doesn't realize is that when she goes on stage, and I don't mean this, she sells her sexy self. So she is what actually draws a lot of people to the band, because she plays off of her boyfriend, and they do it in a very sexualized way. So the band is known for her being that sexy siren. So that's kind of where I leave you in book one, is they're starting to take off. And with the second book, I go through the pitfalls. They still, and back in the day, if a record company signed you, they wanted, say, 4 albums of you, 5 albums, and you needed to produce that. And it was like, make an album, go tour, go back in the studio, record, go back on tour. And that was the way they did it. And I'm sure you remember back in the day, Prince put slave on his face because he was obligated to a record company to produce a certain amount of albums. And he just felt, they owned him, which they did. The record companies owned you back in the day. And then I take the band to the part where they're starting to think of doing their own record label, which is what bands do today. A lot of bands will just record in a studio that they have made. And so they're not obligated to a record company anymore. So,
Nice. Sounds like some interesting books. So, my last and final question before I let you go: what advice would you give up and coming authors who are writing books along the lines that you're writing?
well, you better know about the rock scene, okay, which I do. And honestly, I had to research some things because I had she the female character does covers. That's how she opens up their shows. So you need to make sure that the song that you want her to sing actually came out in the time frame. So there is a little research that you have to do. Um, I believe that you really need to know about the music world in order to write about it. You can't be flippant because there is so many people who actually do know about it, whether, and I'm not even saying people who are in bands, but people are very educated in the music scene. So you better be true to what you're writing about. That's one thing. And if you feel you have a story, you should write it. I mean, I took my creativity from wanting to sing to wanting to act to giving the best parties in the world, where I used to live in Honolulu. Believe it or not, I lived there. Um, and so the creative force within you can only stay dormant for a while, and then it will come out. And to those people who kind of keep putting it on the back shelf, I will say it's going to come out. And for me, it came out in writing, and I I find it very easily. I know what my other 3 books that when I finish Perfection Saga are going to be about, because I've been thinking of those stories also. But this was the one that I felt I needed to get out the most.
Oh, okay. So I want to thank you so much, Beth, for coming on my podcast and sharing your stories with us. And I hope you have a great day.
You too. And book 3 is coming out, and hopefully book 4 by January. I mean, I do have 6 books. The 6 books are written, so I'm waiting to get to the chaos part of the story.
Nice. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
You too, Brooke. Thanks.
Bye. Hey everyone, thank you all so much for listening to my interview with Beth. If you would like to purchase her books, you can go on her website or you can go to Amazon. Thank you all so much and hope to see you next time for the next interview. Bye.